Welcome to Astounding Talk Radio with Reggie Stearns. Join us as we explore the how and the why and the forces that shape and mold our world. Talk radio is so astounding, there's no frequency to contain it. I'm Reggie Stearns, and thanks for joining us on Astounding Talk Radio. Our guest today is Julie Austin, the author of The Money Garden, How to Plant the Seeds for a Lifetime of Income. She's also a serial entrepreneur and an inventor. So if you are thinking about starting a business or have your own small business, you'll love today's show. Now remember, you can always find us on iTunes and Stitcher and YouTube, and also on astoundingtalk.com / this particular show is /14106. All right, well, why don't we just get to the show? Today's show, we have Julie Austin. She's an entrepreneur. She's invented a product. She's invented services. She's written a book. She's a speaker. She has a really interesting background, how she became the entrepreneur that she is today. And it's going to be, I think, a really interesting show for anybody who is listening, who wants to start their own business or is considering one. Now, she has a book called The Money Garden, which kind of walks you through how to start your own business and such, but we'll get to there in a minute. So, Julie, thank you for joining us today on Astounding Talk.
Well, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your start. I know you kind of took the leap in New York City as a young adult, like 18 years old or something.
That was kind of a big leap. I was living in North Carolina, and at 18, just wanted to get out of town and go somewhere new, and jumped right into New York City, which is kind of culture shock. But I did it, and was there to be an actor and model and all of the things that what you do get out of your system when you're young. and it was fun, but it was quite a struggle, as you can imagine, trying to break into any kind of show business at the same time you're trying to pay the bills is always a struggle.
Sounds like your early start were some of the movies I'm addicted to. I love those old 40s and 50s movies where they just go to New York City and try to start out on their own, and then all the trials and tribulations. Yours is fascinating. What was your first job there, and then where did you live with a family as well? Tell us a little bit about those.
Well, actually, what happened was I did not have a plan. I moved to New York, had no idea where I was going to live. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have any money. I think I had $200 and a plane ticket, and that's really it, and a suitcase.
Wow.
Just kind of showed up and went into a modeling agency, and this is where fate really kind of played a role, because I happened to, just as I'm in that modeling agency, I meet this mom and her daughter who were also from North Carolina. And we started talking, and she said, "Well, where are you going to live?" And I said, I don't know. I thought maybe I'd, get a hotel room or something for a while. She goes, "That's not, $200 is not going to last you very long. Why don't you come live with us?" And that's how it started.
Just by happenstance. I think you have a guardian angel. I mean, showing up in New York City with $200.
You bet I do.
And so, but it turns out your apartment wasn't that luxurious as, so they were struggling, trying to help their children coming to New York.
They were struggling too, and we were all so naive. We ended up in the hood. It was like a gang neighborhood, and how we made it out of there, I don't know. But we had a few people in the neighborhood that looked out for us, and somehow we got through it.
Now, when your time in the hood, you were looking for different jobs in the entertainment modeling world. Tell us how that worked. How hard was that? Did you just start knocking on doors?
I did. I mean, actually, now that you just mentioned it, that's really what I do today. And I literally went door to door. I would just walk in and say, here's my picture and resume, and don't know if you need anybody, but here it is. And then I would just, that's really how I did it. I went door to door, and I'd come back a few weeks later, and I'd say, okay, maybe you're not looking right now, but here's my picture, and give me a call when you're looking. I did that so much that people eventually said, okay, we'll find a job for you. And I ended up doing the cover of several magazines, actually. I mean, it's not Vogue magazine because I'm, pretty short to be, 5'5", 5'6" is too short to be, a Vogue model. But I actually did a lot of magazine covers.
That's
and
amazing.
Started working. And this is really what I do today. It's just I pick up the phone, I knock on doors, and it works. It's old school, but it's harder for people to turn you down when you're talking to them one-on-one. And most people like to do email now. Those people don't care. It's just, you're just an email. You're not a human being. And so I think some of these old school tactics are very valuable.
You learned the entrepreneurial way right at the beginning. To do anything in business,
Right.
you have to not be scared to sell a little bit. Now, you don't have to be a
Oh,
used
no.
car salesman.
I would tell anybody who has a business, who has a product, who wants to go be an entrepreneur, you better learn how to sell. And if you ever watch Shark Tank, which I hope you do, you'll see that, especially Mark Cuban, if people get on there, he'll say, what are you going to do with the money? Oh, we're going to hire some employees, or we're going to hire some reps. You'll notice he rolls his eyes because that tells him, it would tell me, you are going to be wasting my money. Because if you don't know how to sell your product or service, nobody will be able to. And you should save that money. This is your education.
Yeah.
Learn how to sell.
And nobody will sell or is more motivated in the success of your business than you.
Right.
So those are some interesting, just trying to get in the modeling world, that right there gives you some good experience of what's going to really take you through the rest of your life, not being scared to interact with people, not being scared to actually go up and ask and kind of sell. Now, it sounds like I was talking to you at the pre-show. It sounds like even as a little girl, you were doing something like lemonade stands and such. Sound like you tell us a little bit about that before we go any further.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's one thing that kids today aren't able to do because they've been shutting down lemonade stands because of the regulations of, who knows what's in your lemonade or who knows what. But, that's how kids learned, is by having a lemonade stand. You learn so much about entrepreneurship that way. I mean, I did anything. I would mow grass, babysit, I sold candles door to door. I sold candy door to door. I mean, whatever I could do. And it was funny that now that I'm just saying this out loud, that is really how I have managed as an entrepreneur. And the first time I had to go and knock on a door to sell, I believe it was candles. I was petrified. I was just petrified. I didn't know what to do, and I kind of knocked on the door and I went, you don't want to buy these candles, do you? And they did, and they bought a bunch of stuff from me. And I walked away thinking, wow, I did that. They bought it.
A lot of kids don't do that. I sold something for Cub Scouts. It must have been cookies or something. And I'm like, okay, I got to go do this. I was putting it off, and I finally started doing it. And I was getting a success, and then another success. I'm like, hey, this is pretty good. And I went up and down the block, and I ran out of cookies. So I tried to get more cookies, couldn't get enough. And it turns out I was the best seller out of everybody because nobody would do it. They went around and they were selling to their aunts and their uncles, but they weren't really going door to door with their box. And you probably felt this. Once you make that sale and somebody, you're like, wow, that's weird. They really bought something from me. That almost makes you want to go into business. I don't know what, right? Am I following? Are
Right.
you following me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And that's what we're not really teaching our kids anymore. We're almost teaching them really to be employees, unfortunately.
Right. And the thing about being an employee is that what I discovered is that there is no security in that. I mean, there's no security in being an entrepreneur, obviously, but you whatever you make of it is your own it's your own opportunities. You work as hard as you want, you work as little as you want, and there's always a way to make a living as an entrepreneur.
See, that I think that's the initial part of your book, The Money Garden. You talk a little bit about the skills that people have already and trying to show them you have some of the skills already. What are your interests? What do you like to do?
Yeah, I do something, actually, I do it as a private coaching, but it's called Create Your Own Job. And it's something very unique. It goes beyond just, here's what I like to do and here are my skills. It goes deep into how to use innovation to create businesses and jobs that don't exist. And that is where you'll really start to, jump ahead of your competition.
What do you mean by innovation?
Yeah, innovation could be, coming up with a new product, but it could also be about a new way of doing business. It could be, innovating a way to save money, to make money, to new innovation as far as going into new markets. Corporations say they want to innovate, and some of them really do, but a lot of times they want us to do things the same way they've always done it. And the thing about a startup, where you have an advantage over a big corporation, which is a lot of bureaucracy, is that you can change on a dime. It's your business. You decide, what, this doesn't work, we're going to do away with it. In government or big corporations, it's like turning around a big, gigantic cruise ship,
right.
As opposed to a little sailboat. You can be flexible and try different things as a small startup.
And if we all had a little bit more of that, doing our own thing, innovating, because there's this, the best part about the free market, unlike government, the free market, everything's voluntary. If somebody doesn't want something, they don't buy it. You can't force them to buy it from you. It's a voluntary
Right.
exchange. Government, the one thing that makes, I think, government so contentious, makes government so contentious is that if you pass a law, everybody's got to live by it. So then it becomes this fight for every little inch, and then it becomes politics and everything else. The best thing about the free market, if you just had more free market, you have people trying to please others, because you don't even ask people their politics. You just say, what can I do to please you?
Right,
And
right.
I think that's the best part of, that's what America, I think what made America great. People kind of forget about what America's start was. Essentially came from Europe, where in Europe you had to be a political class, you had old money, you had to get permission, you couldn't even basically own land in different places. You had to be a serf, work under a serf. In America, it was land was almost free. You could homestead a home. You could start the America was really about innovation. It was about whatever you wanted, it could be done here. And so people in droves came here. In fact, people in the world still want to come here, even though we have a lot more rules, a lot more regulations that they're not aware of. That's still what America's about. So and if we had just more of that, I think we wouldn't be looking to government. Now, disruption, I think you're also talking about disruption. That's sort of a buzzword right now. How to disrupt the market, and that innovation is disrupting kind of the players as they are today.
Well, I have kind of an issue with that word because as far as buzzwords, it was great while it lasted, but I think people are using it in the wrong way. I would use it in the way that, disruption is the horse and buggy was disrupted by the car, and so that's probably what that meant was, something is going to come along that is going to turn your business upside down, like the computer, the personal computer did for the typewriter. You know, how could you ever predict you're a typewriter company and you think, hey, we've cornered the market. Typewriters work perfectly. Everyone loves them. Everyone's got one. And then all of a sudden, one day, the entire industry changes and you're out of business. So I think that's where that term started. I think of it more as your competition is going to disrupt you because they are going to beat your, can we say ass on the podcast? Beat your butt. You know, and they're getting ahead of you. It's like the tortoise and the hare. They're just like, okay, how can I do this business better than my competition? How can I completely change the whole entire industry? That's not easy to do, but
and if you do it, people, and well, there's two things. You can probably have an idea to do it, but if you get the word out, people will come to you voluntarily. You don't have to. You know, I look at some of these industries out there that try to use government regulation. They're a dying industry, so they get government regulation to try to save them, their last gasp, instead of letting the market do it. And then, so when you think of innovation, those are all good things. Some people might go out of business because they weren't innovating. It works. And some people who think it's tough almost want more regulation.
Well, my friend used to own a cab company. He sold his part of it, but I was talking to him the other day, and he said, "Oh, they're a scam. Uber is a scam." And I said, "Well, why do you think that?" And he couldn't really explain it. It's just that he was a cab owner, and so for him, regulations were great because he was already in the business. And I think that's one reason people don't want, do want regulations, and people have to get a license because it keeps new people out.
You know, the Uber is a great example of disrupting, you know, the taxi cab industry, and then trying to get government regulation to preserve the status quo. And I mean, but by the way, if people don't know what Uber is, it's an online. It's online software where you can schedule a pickup or a ride from somebody who's not necessarily a cab.
They got around it by saying it was a car service.
Well, let's get in a little bit. You have a pretty interesting background. You've developed Swiggy. Yeah, Swiggy was the product you developed. It's pretty neat. Tell us a little bit about Swiggy, how it works, first off, so we know what it is. And then I want to kind of talk about how does somebody have an idea and take it to production and marketing.
Swiggies they're wrist water bottles for runners, for kids. I also now sell in the alcohol industry, which is something I didn't anticipate. But I came up with the idea because I passed out from dehydration while I was running in the heat in Texas, and on a country road, and luckily someone picked me up and got me into the hospital, and I thought, that's really kind of stupid and dangerous. You know, I need to be drinking water, but where can I put water that's easily accessible where I don't have to carry it? And that's why I came up with putting it on your wrist. And, you know, it took many years to go from the stage of making a prototype, which I made out of clay. Then I said, okay, now what do? I guess I need a mold. And I went to some people I knew who knew something about manufacturing. I got a mold made in the U.S., which was very expensive. And then, you know, made as many of those as I could. Then I had to put a band on it, so I had to find the cap. I had to get the packaging. So it was all piecemeal, and I had to pay for it while I was working 3 jobs because I never had investors, and now I own the whole company. But the good thing is I did every single thing myself, so I learned the business from the ground up. I learned about manufacturing, distribution, warehousing, exporting, importing. I learned all of that stuff just by doing it.
Now it's a patented product, so then you then had to figure that out too. How does somebody patent something?
Well, I mean, when I first started, patenting was a different process than it is now. It's much easier and much, much cheaper.
Oh, really?
At the time, I had to hire an attorney, and it went through the patent process twice, which was extremely expensive. Now they have provisional patenting, which is, I don't know, it's like $100 or something, and you get a patent. It's a provisional patent. It's not a full patent, and it lasts for a year. So you have a whole year to get out there and try to sell the product or license it or do whatever you can. It was much easier now than when I started. So anybody can do that.
Huh. And then once you get a provisional patent, evidently you work it through the whole patenting process.
Right.
That takes. What does that take? How do you know if you have somebody else has the same idea as a provisional patent? You at least have to go that far, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that much about provisional patents because I did it the other way. But, the first thing I would tell anyone who wants to invent a product, or if you have an idea, is to look everywhere possible to see if that product is out there. And that could be, you Google it, you Google different keywords, you look online. There also, if you go to Google, and I think you click on the top, it says more, and it says even more, and you click that, and it'll take you to the Patent and Trademark Office. Mm-hmm. And you can look through there and see if an actual patent has already been issued. That doesn't mean there aren't things in the pipeline, there aren't things pending, but at least you can get that far to see if it's out there. And then some things might not be patented. I have a friend who has 60 products, and none of them are patented. He just gets them on the market. So look everywhere you can to see if that product is there before you ever start.
And evidently, too, once you have a provisional patent, and some people like to get a patent together and then license it, and as the corporations come in, then before they'll probably do some sort of provisional acceptance. Yeah, we like your product. Then we're going to get our attorneys together. We're going to go out and look for us. A lot of people go that direction. Yeah, you did it yourself, though, the entire thing. So then, okay, you have the idea. You actually use some clay models, try to put it together. That's pretty interesting. You got it molded, right? A plastic mold company somehow to do a prototype. And then you took that prototype. Did you do some testing, see if people liked it? Did you kind of make the leap and just jump out there and try to sell it? Or what was your next step?
Well, I should have done a little bit of testing. I didn't. I did crazy things because I just didn't know. I was throwing anything against the wall just to see what would work. And I guess, I think I started out with maybe 1,000 of these and put them together, got the bands, got the packaging, which looked really awful. It was just terrible. If you've seen the original product and the original patent package, and it was just not, I don't know why any store would have taken it, but they did. Mm-hmm. And I actually got it into a big chain, with the bad packaging. And here's what I didn't realize. I thought, oh, great. I got a big order, and I got rid of all the 1,000. They're in all these stores. Went into the store, and it was the bottom shelf in the back of the store. Nobody knew where it was or what it was. So nobody's going to walk into that store and look for a wrist water bottle.
Especially on the bottom shelf, right?
It's on the bottom shelf in the back of the store, and there's no signage or any kind of, nothing. And I didn't know that you have to drive the traffic into the store. And so that was really kind of, a lot of people think the first step is, I'll get it into Walmart, or no, absolutely not. You need to start the opposite way and have it online first and create a buzz and get interest in it so that people will, eventually walk into a store and say, hey, do you sell that wrist water bottle? I just saw it on the Today Show. which I was on the Today Show. But so that's what you have to do, is create the buzz first.
Now, today's world, it's got to be easier to create a buzz online, but even today the online world is so full.
Crowded.
So crowded, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's why you have to, go to wherever your customers are. So, what I thought my customers were hardcore athletes and runners. And it turns out that's not where my market was. I found my market completely by accident. I did a trade show for something. It was action sports something, and I thought, oh, this is great. Well, my product is for runners and it's sports, and this is perfect. No, I did not do any research. It was for skateboarders, surfers, people with mohawks and purple hair, and that was not my market at all. And it was horrible. It was so horrible. I finally just closed up my booth and just started walking the show, and I met another guy there who was in the same situation as me, and he said, I think I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to close down because this is a waste. And we started talking, and he said, your product would be great in the promotional market, pens, mugs, hats, T-shirts with corporate logos on them. And he said, hey, you know what? I'm doing a show in Vegas. I'll give you a little piece of my booth. You can come in and test it and see what happens. Well, I walked in the door, and I didn't even get to the first aisle, and I was mobbed with people.
Wow.
What is that? Oh, my gosh. Can I take a picture? That is so cool. You have samples? And I realized this is my market.
Wow.
I was trying to go in a direction where nobody wanted it.
Uh-huh.
And then you don't really know that when you start out.
Right. Yeah, that's the hardest part I found in anything, is trying to find the customers. Where are they at? Trying to get them interested in what you're doing, and that's pretty interesting. My brother's very similar. He has an elk ranch, believe it or not, and by the way, the elk meat is very healthy. It's like the only good red meat. He said, I'm going to go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming this weekend. Want to come in with me? Sure. And so he loaded up he made this styrofoam big freezer or whatever, ice chest in the back of his pickup, and we drove to Jackson, Wyoming, and the whole area over there. And I thought, this guy's crazy. And it was full of elk meat. And and he sold every bit of it. And then, and came back, but nobody knew about it. Just like you said, face-to-face stuff is what did it. People got to see it. Yeah, I'll try it. Then he was getting phone calls afterwards, and people loved it. But he tried to sell it through some distribution centers, like these ones that go to different restaurants and stuff, and they wanted insurance and they wanted a piece of it. They didn't push it, like you were saying. And he was like, man, this is not working. Maybe this is a bad idea. So he started finding his market as well, more of where people come to on a vacation. They want something local. What's in the Rocky Mountain? Well, elk meat. Okay, yeah, I'll try a burger. And right. And so that was his market. It's really interesting how that worked. And so it's very, the parallels are very similar. I think for every product is really trying to find that customer who wants it, the one who's really going to be knocking on your door. It looks like you found it there at that promotional booth. Tell us a little bit more.
Oh yeah,
how that went.
sold over 500,000.
Wow.
Just in that market, without advertising.
Without advertising, just in that market right there, word of mouth, people knowing it.
Yeah, because it's the only one in the world.
Uh-huh.
It's patented. It now has a trade dress, which is like a trademark. So people in that industry want something unique, and it's hard to constantly come up with unique things. Everyone sells pens. Everyone sells hats and T-shirts. There are a million, though. Everyone sells regular, plain old water bottles. There are a million people selling those. So that's why you have to be unique. You got to stand out. And I always constantly tell people that. It's like, what do you sell? I had someone come to me as a publicist, because I work also as a publicist, and they said, oh, we have a chocolate company. We sell chocolate. Oh, chocolate what? Oh, just chocolate candy. So is it chocolate-covered grasshoppers? Or you is the company run by circus clowns? What makes you unique? Why am I going to buy your chocolate over C's or what's the other big Cadbury or any of those, right?
Right.
Why am I going to buy yours? And that's what you got to think about. What makes you different?
Especially when it's crowded out there.
The what?
You can't just especially when it's crowded out there.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the early days of the internet, some people were saying that earlier, you don't have to advertise, you just put it online and people come to you. There was so few marketers out there, and nobody knew what to do about it. It was kind of expensive to do your own website. So I remember those early days. The people were actually saying you didn't really have to advertise much. Well, everybody's online now. It's crowded there. It's crowded everywhere. And so something distinctive like you're talking about, like your product, the Swiggies, I can see that.
I mean, it has the downside of, people like to stick with what they know. Well, we have a plain water bottle. We know that. And why do I need to put it on my wrist? In the beginning, you're going to have to, if you're that innovative, you're going to have to kind of educate them a little bit on, here's what's good about this. You can freeze them, and it lowers your body temperature. You can put a corporate logo on them. It's hands-free. You don't have to hold it.
This was your NASDAQ Product of the Year semifinalist, is the Swiggy, right?
Right.
It's still going strong.
It is. It's not like it was, the economy really kind of destroyed me, 2009, 2010, people, even today, it's still, I personally don't think we've ever recovered. As a small business owner, I don't think so. And maybe it's because my product is an impulse item. It's only a $13 product, but it's an impulse item. It's not like food that you have to have.
Right.
So I don't know. I just think it's been very tough for small businesses.
I think that's very true out there.
I don't think I'm alone.
No, you're not. Well, hitting on that. I mean, I'm in the real estate industry as well, and that comes and goes. The wages aren't going up if you just go to work. The wages really aren't keeping up with the cost of living. Businesses, we're almost used to this low-level activity, I think, anymore.
I'm not. I'm
Okay.
used to the way it used to be, where I would wake up in the morning and turn on my computer and it'd say, "You've got cash."
Yeah.
I would make money before I woke up in the morning.
Nice.
So the thing is, you do, in this kind of environment, you have to be more innovative. And in fact, that's why I wrote the book, The Money Garden, is because I decided at that point, I said, I will never, ever put all of my eggs in one basket again. I am going to have multiple streams of income. If anything happens, if it's like going the way of the typewriter, if any of my businesses do that, okay, I have 4 more, and that's just how I will never stick with just one business again.
I'm with you on that. I mean, there's so many times I do entrepreneurial stuff, I do job stuff. It's so frustrating when you're trying to find a job, you're qualified, nobody's hiring, no matter what you do, or you take an interview, take another interview, and you don't make it. There's just so many people out there, but your future is in somebody else's hands every time. Now that's a job I can do. I can do that very well, and I will take this amount of money. But you are dependent on so many other people for your livelihood, your future, maintaining your lifestyle, your house. And that's actually some of the impetus for me being more entrepreneurial is that, because I'm tired of putting my life in someone else, else's hands. But it's not easy. Let's go on. Let's talk about your book a little bit, the Money Garden. Kind of hit on it, but what's the whole point of the Money Garden?
I started writing the Money Garden because when I would just say when the economy crashed. I had been keeping notes about what I'd done all of these years to bootstrap a business and create a product and all of that kind of stuff. And so the Money Garden is the Money Garden, how to plant the seeds for a lifetime of income. And it's about creating and running multiple businesses. And it sounds daunting. It sounds really, people hear that and they go, oh my God, I'm already tired. How can you run 4 businesses? The thing is, in the beginning, it's a lot of work. But if you get it down to a system where you have other people running things for you, then you can move on to something else. And I have distributors in 24 countries. So I'm kind of just a ringleader now. I've already done all of the hard work. So, someone orders from, say, Germany, they place an order. They order from my factory, which is all set up and running. I get it shipped out, and once, I take care of that and gets to them, they have their own reps. They have their own marketing. They do all of their own, they run their own business. So that, doesn't take up very much of my time anymore. I just do the PR and, get on the Today Show or HGTV or the Lifetime Network and I have an article coming out in the Wall Street Journal. So that kind of thing, I am constantly giving them the marketing tools and the things that they need, but I don't have to spend 100% of my time on that business. So then I can move on to something else. And that's what the book is about.
Now, you mentioned something there. You said you have an article coming out in the Wall Street Journal?
Yeah.
Coming out soon?
I thought it was supposed to be out in November. It might be out in December.
Can you give us a hint? Anything about it? Or is it?
I mean, it's about
classified?
Swiggies, and it's about bootstrapping a business.
Uh-huh.
And coming up with crazy, wacky new products.
Uh-huh. Now, the lifetime of these multiple businesses, kind of as we were talking, so your life is, you lose your job, your life now has changed, now you're on unemployment, now what's next, right? But if you have multiple streams of income, if that, you're still vulnerable to the market, but if one dips, maybe the other one
Right. I call it, it's basically you have, low-end products, you have medium products, you have higher-end products. So you always have something. If the economy is good, then, maybe everyone's buying your product. If the economy's bad, then you might only be selling luxury products. But you have different price points, different products. Also, you have different services. So I have coaching, I have webinars, live events. So I put on, I have different services that are also at different price points. So I call it marketing wide and marketing deep. Coming up with new markets, new products, new services, and also coming up with more products and services for the people you already sell to.
So
if you want to double your money, do both.
Right. So if you were starting out with nothing, you would say you do one at a time, do that well, move to the next, keep that one going,
yep.
Move to another one, or are you saying do
yep.
all 4
I mean, you can, start one business, get it up and running to the point where it almost runs itself. And the thing with having the internet is that it's completely possible to do that. I don't just rely on online, though. I mean, I have a lot of my businesses that are offline. When I put on a live event, that's not an online thing. It's,
The next part, okay, so you have an idea, you want to grow it. Let's see, one of your chapters is find the right fertilizer. That's to get it growing. That must be marketing, production.
Yeah, that's the marketing part. I mean, marketing and PR.
Uh-huh. And the marketing and PR, what do you suggest to people? I know it really depends on the product or the service and such, but tell us a little bit about the marketing. What do you suggest there?
You know what? In the very beginning, especially, would do things like getting to bloggers, getting into running communities or getting into the mom bloggers, because Swiggies have a kid version now. And so moms, that is one connected group. If you start going into looking in the blogs and the mom blogs, it's like going into a rabbit hole. You see one and it says, here are all the blogs I follow. And you can start clicking on all the mom blogs, and that takes you to another completely different group of moms who blog. And they're a powerful block, a consumer block, really.
Again, it really kind of goes to finding your customer base, like you talked earlier. From the athletes to more of the promotional material. Now you're branching out into, for families.
And also I found out that people were putting alcohol in them, that college kids were putting alcohol in them and doing pub crawls. Then I started getting companies that wanted to put their logo on them. And then I think this is really big in Canada and some other countries. I don't know how big it is here, but, an alcohol company would put their logo on it, and the college kids, right before college starts, they have a whole week of pub crawl kind of events. And so it gets their logo seen, and it's just, an interesting new promotional item.
That's funny. Of course, in college, they'd find a way to add alcohol to it.
Yeah, they were sneaking it into football games. It just looks like they have something on their wrist, like it looks like an accessory. Nobody knew what it was. Oh, it's full of booze.
Yeah. No matter what you make, it could be made. It could be used for good or ill, right? Yeah, that's funny.
I don't endorse anything,
Well, it's up to you were selling a
I'm
product?
selling an empty bottle that I say is a water bottle. You can call it whatever you want.
Yeah, that's interesting. So then that's finding the right fertilizer, planting the seeds, and that to me, that is the hardest thing in business. Looks like you've kind of found your way around that hardest thing, but I don't think the hardest thing, well, it might be hard if you're trying to put it together, but you have a product, you have a service. The hardest thing is getting people to buy it. And like earlier I was talking about those cookies I was selling. I was amazed that somebody would buy those cookies from me. I sold walnuts too as a kid. Every time somebody would buy something from me, I'm still amazed if I sell something. I'll buy a house, rent it, rehab it, and then resell it. I'm still amazed that somebody buys it from me. I don't know why I'm so amazed.
For every seller, there is a buyer.
Yeah, there is. And just getting out there, finding the right method to do it. Now, at one point, I would buy a house. I tried it, do for sale by owner for a while. I could not sell a house for sale by owner to save my life. I would eventually. It would be there forever, but the market truly was getting in the multiple listing service, and that's how you sell it. That was finding that market. Where are the customers at, To me, that is the hardest thing out there. You could struggle for a long time until you find that, and then it just cascades.
Yeah, I was at the Vegas airport, and a guy came up to me, and he saw me wearing the Swiggies. And he said, if you have 2 minutes, I'm going to show you how you can make a lot of money with that product. I said, okay. I was doubtful. Sure. But he said, have you ever heard of the Hash House Harriers? And I went, no. Have you heard of them?
No.
Okay. It is actually a huge, huge club or organization. They have them all over the world. Any given day, there is a hash going on. And what it is, people run and drink beer. And it's kind of a game. It's a game that started many, many years ago. It's an old organization. And it's like the Hash and Hares and Hounds, I think, was the original. Somebody's going to correct me on this, I'm sure, but I'm not an expert on it. But it's a game that's played, and it's, basically running from one beer keg to another kind of thing and playing this game. And so he said, this is so perfect because we're running with an open beer. and it spills, and some cities it's illegal to do that. He said this is perfect. And so if you look on my website, on the Swiggies.com website, you'll see I have a whole section now on hash carriers, and that is one market I sell a lot in. People put beer in them and they run in the hashes.
That one there is a luxury item, if you will. Entertainment comes after you've had your basic needs met. And it cracks me up the amount of money people spend on entertainment.
But we're glad that they do. Yeah, they say it's a running club with a drinking club with a running problem.
Okay. There's definitely a certain market. That's not the 50-year-old market, I'm guessing, on that one.
Right.
Or it could be the Kiwanis or the BPOE. What are those guys? The moose or something, the elk or something. Yeah, they might do it. So then you're always involved. You definitely are following what your book is, because you have an online company called Speaker Sponsor.
Yeah, that was another thing that I branched out on. That just kind of started because, again, the economy was so bad and retail was just struggling, and I don't know, nobody was doing anything. And I said, well, I might as well. I have tons of information that can help a lot of people from all of these years of doing this myself and coming up with a product and being, in the innovation and everything. And I said, and I have a background as a TV host and a theater actor, so maybe public speaking would be something I could do. And then again, I went into it and loved it and started making money instantly. I just went into it and said, I am going to make money. That's it. I'm not speaking for free. I'm going to make money. And so the very first time I ever spoke in front of anyone, and if you tell this to any speaker, they'll go, oh, my God. I had little note cards, and it was just terrible. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but you shouldn't. It was a 30-minute speech, and I'm walking around with note cards. But the reason I made $2,500 the first time I ever spoke, which is amazing, is because I had sponsors. I went out and got sponsors, and I did something called the Fun Job Fair. And the Fun Job Fair was a job fair at a bowling alley. It was the opposite of what a job fair normally is. I charged the job seekers. And everyone said, you can't do that. They're poor. They're broke. That's mean. That's wrong. And I said, well, then this is a free market. They don't have to come.
Right.
You know what? If they don't want to come to my job fair, they can go to a free one and stand in line with 5,000 people. Mine is different. It's only 100 job seekers, and then I cut it off. It's sold out. That's it. No more. And then, I'll have several people who have jobs who are going to bowl with them and mingle with them, and it's much more intimate. And I sold out. I sold out quickly. And some of those people, I believe that I've checked up on them, they still have the jobs that they got through that job fair.
So what you do, you went out and recruited employers. You put them together to interact in a bowling alley.
Yeah.
Is that what you just said?
And it was much more fun because I used to volunteer for these job fairs, and it was so boring and so depressing, and nobody liked it. The job seekers didn't like it, and the people who had jobs, they didn't like it, and nobody really wanted to be there. And I said, this is not fun, and everything I do has got to be fun, or I'm not going to do it.
Well, that's actually pretty wise. Think about it, because you're interacting. You're not just trying to put on a good face. An interview that's so scripted and nobody, yes, these open-ended questions, have people answer how they would answer that, but you're not really interacting with them, seeing their personalities. And then as you're talking with them, things will come up that I can just see that really working. That's a good idea. So that's another good one. Yeah. And so that led you to the speaker sponsor, or is that just something else?
Yeah, and that led me to the speaker sponsor because here's another thing. I found out that a lot of meeting planners were having their budgets cut, like tremendously. People are just, and you still see this. Budgets are being cut. People are being laid off. And so a lot of the times the secretaries were planning the meetings and they didn't have any budget, so they were getting speakers to do it for free. And I said, well, I can't speak for free because I have bills to pay. So how can we work this out? Maybe I can get my own sponsor. And that's what happened. I started going to small business sponsors, not the big corporations, because that takes too long. I said, why don't we, I'll get a small business to sponsor me. They'll pay for my way and pay for me to speak, and I will promote them in ways that don't interfere with the speech. Otherwise, I'm going to stand up here and give you a 1-hour infomercial, and nobody wants that. I don't like to do that, and your audience is going to hate it. So I would rather get paid and then give them great information. And so other speakers said, well, how can I do that? That's how I put together speaker sponsors so that, that small businesses can meet speakers who have opportunities.
Okay, so
a speaker is going to get a free gig in front of 100 golfers, let's say, and they're not going to pay the speaker. So I go, I'll get a country club, like a local country club or a golf accessory company, to sponsor that speaker, and they would be thrilled because they're getting their brand in front of 100 golfers.
And it's not necessarily at their building, it's at a conference somewhere.
It's at a conference, which has even more golfers and more people, and it's just, it kind of builds on it.
Okay, so say I'm somebody who wants to use the speaker sponsor service that you have, and I have a skill set. I don't know. Well, say, let's use your golfing example. I am a retired professional golfer, and you want to speak. So, and then you're going to go to the PGA conference somewhere. What would you do is, like, you said smaller, so you wouldn't go to like Top Flight Balls or something for them to sponsor. I guess you could.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I'm not, discounting the big corporations. It's just the Coca-Cola is probably not going to sponsor a breakout speaker at a conference. It's just not. It's not enough ears and eyeballs for them. They're going to sponsor a big event, or Red Bull. Red Bull is going to sponsor someone who jumps out of a space capsule. It's just much bigger for them. And that's why I focus on the small businesses, because they can't really compete with those companies. But they can in this arena.
Okay, so if I had like a pitching wedge, I invented a good pitching wedge, and I'm an upstart, and so then that would be a perfect sponsor to go to the PGA, and then, as a speaker. So I get it. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I'm going to have to look into your service there, and I have to sign up on that one. I don't know what I could do.
I mean, it's great for both parties. It's good for the audience because they get great information. It's good for the meeting planner because they don't have to pay the speaker and they get a great speaker. Mm-hmm. It's good for the speaker because they get paid, and then it's good for the small business because they're getting promoted in an industry that is 100% their audience. Like, it's not like you put a commercial on TV and maybe someone will see it, maybe they won't. This is very targeted marketing.
What kind of marketing do they do? So, as this golf speaker,
well, like the golf speaker would have signage in the room. They would maybe hand out promotional products with the company's logo on it, or they would do some kind of special promotion so they can track it. They would say, anyone who, goes into our, let's say it's a country club, anyone who signs up for XYZ Country Club gets a 20% discount if you use this code. And that's how you track it. Yeah. So you can, see what your return on investment is from those, codes, things like that. You get them on maybe on an email list if they want to be on an email list. But you're getting to that target audience one-on-one.
Yeah, that's definitely, if you're selling something, a product or service, and you want that target, that's the best bang for your buck.
Yeah, that is, you can't beat that. I mean, really, you could pay, let's say that you pay a speaker, I don't know, I'm just going to make up a number here, $250, $300, $400 as for a sponsorship at a conference. You could spend that kind of money on an ad that wouldn't bring you anything. And I've done it before, and it got nothing. People want, especially nowadays, I think it's going to become much more targeted and focused and personal. Instead you have a speaker who's up there who's in front of your target audience, who's got your signage in the room and says, thank you to, XYZ Country Club for sponsoring me. When you get off when the conference is over, you got to head over there. In fact, they're going to give you 20% off. So it's just a quick pitch. It's not like you're doing a whole infomercial for them.
So guys, think about it. Online stuff, Facebook or Google or something, if you're bidding for different clicks, I mean, you're lucky to get a click for $5 or $15 sometimes. I mean, that's a big chunk of money just for somebody to click and go, never mind, it's nothing I wanted.
Right.
This is kind of what you've learned in life about being an entrepreneur, and you put it in the book about being an entrepreneur, and this kind of guides you through it. So if I follow this through the book, what do you think? Going to work?
I think you'll do very well. I really do. I mean, it's everything. I'm pretty sure I have to go back and reread my own book, but I'm pretty sure everything in there is bootstrapping kind of stuff. It's not, if anything costs you money, it's very little. Most of it is, here's how to be creative and get your customers.
Right. So do you use online? I just mentioned Facebook and Google advertising. Do you ever do that much?
I've done some Google ads.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it.
They work?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, if you can spend, $1,000 to make 3,000, that's probably a pretty good return on investment.
Yeah, you really have to know what you're doing, though, because you could blow through a lot of money if you don't know exactly what you're paying for.
Yeah. As an entrepreneur, you started, from a little kid kind of looking at it, you can make a little bit of money. You did it as a model, working your way up through that way, had to sell yourself there. You had some employment after that a little bit, and then you went back into, what'd you say, you lost your job or something? And then you said you're tired of, your life being dependent on somebody hiring you or laying you off or something. So then you wanted to control that part of your life, right?
Yeah.
And so there's multiple streams of income. That's actually a book out there. I forgot what author that was. Multiple streams of income is kind of what you're kind of saying out there too.
Right.
But yours is Money Garden. How to do something. A lot of your book essentially is kind of bootstrapping you from the beginning, getting you saying you have something to sell, because that's the first part of your book. Then how to work your way through those, develop a product or service, how to market it, how to plant more seeds, and that's been your life. It sounds like it's been a good life.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So, well, Julie, thank you for coming on the show today, and I want to make sure that I give you an opportunity to kind of wrap up everything we talked about, so people know where to find you. So if you would take a few minutes, if you want to do that.
Sure. I mean, I guess I have 7 or 8 blogs, but the kind of the primary one is called createforcash.com. That's create, F-O-R, createforcash.com. The other one is speakersponsor.com, and the other one is Swiggies, SWIGGIES.com.
Create for Cash. That one, is that your the Money Garden?
That's got Money Garden in there, yeah.
And you can also get that at Amazon, I believe.
At Amazon,
Mm-hmm. And what about Barnes & Noble, any other places, or primarily
yep,
Amazon?
at all of them.
Okay. And then you have Speaker Sponsor. We spent a little bit of time talking about that, how people, if they have some knowledge base, and they want to be a speaker, that's a perfect place to go to, especially if they want to get some sponsors, how that's done. And then your Swiggies, the product that you developed, that's out there as well.
Yes, all of the above.
All of the above. Yeah. As we wrap up, is there any parting thoughts of wisdom you want to give people if they're thinking about going into business?
I mean, there's never a bad time for entrepreneurship. People were entrepreneurs during the Great Depression. In fact, I have a story about how, putt-putt or miniature golf was started during the Great Depression, but it wasn't what you think of now. It was like rusty stovepipes and tires, and they used whatever they had, like as an obstacle course, but that's how it started. It started with nothing. So you just have to be creative and innovative.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for coming on the show, and maybe we'll talk another time.
Well, thank you for having me on.